Hey guys, or one person, hello. My name is Sean. I wanted to give my opinion or my thoughts on Dan Didio leaving DC Comics. It was a couple days ago. I'm recording this Sunday. So it's probably a couple days ago that I heard about this. It was like 1 a.m. in the morning when I woke up. All of a sudden, just it was, breaking news for comic book industry. Overall thoughts, I'm very happy with the change that's going to happen with DC Comics moving forward. I can't say I'm happy that the guy lost his job, but I am excited that finally, after almost 10 years of just month-to-month comic book reading with DC Comics, I can't tell you how excited I am that DC is going to be hopefully moving in a better direction. So for background, I read comic books. I've been reading comics since 2005, but 2011 is when I started to collect single issues. That's when the New 52 happened. I was, in my 20s at the time when New 52 happened. I thought it was a great idea. Because I never collected single issues. I thought the New 52 was a good starting on point for new readers, and it sold really well. But after a year, it just became a mess, and it got to the point where DC was just trying to just convolute everything and change things and make things complicated with their continuity. They started this thing called DCU, which was not great, and so then Rebirth happened. Rebirth happened like 4 years ago. Wow, 4 years ago, crazy. When that started, a lot of people were excited because it wasn't a reboot. It was still the New 52 carrying over just a new, a new fresh start, so to say. I think Rebirth was, I just don't think it was that good. You had some titles that were terrible, like Tom King's Batman is just awful, just god awful. You had Justice League, which was awful at the time. Snyder was not writing it at the time. I think it was written by Brian Hitch and someone else, but it wasn't good. The only thing that was good is probably things from Snyder or Jeff Johns. You had a lot of different changes in Rebirth, or a lot of different changes in DC that was just awful. DC's been having some bad decisions over the last 10 years. We've had Wally West that came back, but then he became a murderer. You had Dick Grayson, who was no longer Nightwing. He became a secret agent or a spy with his full name, just Grayson. And then you had him go to Rick Grayson, which I still don't. I haven't read that at all, and I hope that changes. Terrible decisions you've had. Superman in the New 52 is one of the worst Superman runs of all time. One of the worst, even worse than I would say 90s Superman comics, the reign of the Supermen. New 52 Superman was really bad, but when they killed him off and they brought back post-crisis Superman, and then into Rebirth, that was when Rebirth Superman came out. That was the greatest Superman stories of all time that I've ever read. You had Jonathan Kent, you had Superman as a father, you had the whole family dynamic. I really thought that Superman, at least, was one of the best and strongest of DC's Rebirth. I've read little things here and there. Justice League, when Scott Snyder took over, it seemed like it was going to be fine. It started out like, oh cool, the Doom Patrol or the Legion of Doom Patrol. The Legion of Doom, it sounded like a good idea, but then reading 40 issues almost of Scott Snyder's run, it just became big and messy and over the top and too complicated and just messy. It's just awful. There's been a lot of terrible things at DC over the last 10 years, and this needed to happen. Dan Didio, as I would say, he is the actual publisher. I don't think Jim Lee makes any of these decisions, because I feel like Jim Lee is just an honorary, his title is just honorary. They gave him the title of co-publisher because of his enormous success with his company, with Wildstorm and things like that. But I mean, it just had to happen. Like, I'm so happy that hopefully whoever's going to be in it, new things can happen, better things can happen. And if they have to reboot the whole entire universe again, or go back to the status quo of post-Crisis, I'm totally fine with that. I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. And a lot of people may not believe me when I say this, but I had lunch with Dan Didio one time. And the way it happened was here in Florida, where I live, my comic book store, or my old comic book store called Coliseum of Comics, they have several stores here in Florida, Kissimmee, Tampa. The guy that owns the store did this thing where he invited a fan or a customer from each store to have lunch with the owner and Dan Didio. This was like May of 2018, so this is like when Orlando MegaCon came around here. But we had lunch with Dan Didio at some Italian restaurant over in Orlando, next to the Orlando Event Center, like whatever that's called. So he came, we all ate, and we all talked comic books. It was actually a great discussion, because when my friend asked me, hey, Sean, do you want to have lunch with Dan Didio? Like, I wasn't like, oh my God, I love Dan Didio, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. I'm not a huge fan of Dan Didio's decisions, but I was excited that I was going to have the opportunity to sit down and talk with this man and ask him, hey, why did you do this? Why is this happening? And when I did sit with him, and there's like a picture on my Twitter that you guys can find, or there's pictures on my Facebook that you guys can find where I did, afterwards when I got a picture with him of it. But some of the questions I asked him were, with Bendis taking over, why would you quit? Why would you stop Tomasi's Superman? It's very successful, and people like that Superman. Why all of a sudden change it up? He said that Superman was not selling, which I don't believe, but how he went over it was the first 2 volumes of Superman Rebirth, so issues like 6 to 12-ish were all, were selling, but after that, books just dropped off. People weren't getting into Superman anymore. He said that Superman wasn't doing Superman things, punching big monsters and doing space things and all that stupid shit that makes Superman boring, in my opinion. He also said that social media is terrible for creators, because he said that it distracts them from work. I told him I disagree heavily. I think that whenever social media, you have like people like Scott Snyder or Greg Capullo or Gail Simone or Gary Frank, anybody that just interacts with their fans on a day-to-day basis, I think that builds relationship with the creators. I think it builds a greater business and a stronger fan base. He said that he disagrees, and that's probably a reason why he doesn't have Twitter or Facebook. He does have an Instagram, but he doesn't ever really use it that much. And then what else? He has 5 stories that have been written by famous writers and artists that are ready to go in case they want to publish them. At the time, Capullo was doing these covers for Swamp Thing and showing them on Twitter. We all thought it was for a Swamp Man book, but he said that it was actually going to be used for Justice League Dark, for James Tynion's book. he's from New York, so I think like someone at the table asked like what his favorite superhero was, and he pulled out a Spider-Man wallet, which I thought was pretty funny. He's a very nice guy. He will talk to you, and he like apologized to me because he was like, "Hey, I'm sorry to disagree with you." I'm like, "No, this is great. I'm understanding from a business point of view of how you see things." And what else did we talk? We talked about like a lot of cool stuff, like how Final Crisis happened, how that mess, came in and sold a lot of books, even though the ending was not written, and how they improvised on it. Told me a funny story about Doug Mankey. What else? He was a nice guy. He was a great guy to have lunch with, and just talk to. I think he was really polite. He was really cool to the fans. He actually, he's asked our opinions on like what we want. Oh, he did. The famous thing is that Dan Didio hates Nightwing. He hates Wally West. He hates those legacy characters. He's not ashamed to admit it. But like he did bring up a good point where, why are Wally West, Dick Grayson, and these other characters, why are they getting older, and people like Flash or Batman, they're not getting older? He made a valid point. So there's a couple things, the good things that have happened at DC, I would say sure, give him credit for, but even a broken clock is right twice a day, meaning that the talent that you do have at DC, some of it is going to shine, some of it is not. And a lot of these artists and these comic book creators are giving him praise online, saying, hey, without Dan Didio, I wouldn't be here. He gave me opportunity, yeah. And I'm just like, well, no shit. Like, of course, you have a job. You're working at DC Comics right now. I can't find a creator or an artist that has said the same thing about him. I mean, there's probably plenty of people and plenty of ideas and great stories that Dan Didio has turned down, where we could have gotten something great. And I think that Dan Didio is just he's a nice guy, but he doesn't understand what fans want. He does not understand that fans don't like this 5G idea that's happening right now. We don't need this, we don't like what you're doing to Wally West. We don't like what you're doing to Dick Grayson. We don't like what you're doing to Batman. Like, Batman's married, and apparently Catwoman's pregnant, and it's just these ideas are not good. These ideas are not good, and DC needed to do something. And you could probably say it's from AT&T because of the lack of sales with DC. Probably AT&T probably had a hand in there. I mean, Dan Didio obviously was not let go, and he didn't have a choice, and to resign or, hey, I'm stepping down. He was fucking fired. Something happened and he got fired, and it's just probably like, hey, we've had enough of this and you need to go. I think that after 10 years at least, if you've been reading DC Comics at least for since the New 52, almost 10 years of just this messy continuity with DC, I think you should feel relieved and happy that there's going to be change. Again, I don't like that the guy lost his job, but I mean, he wasn't even offered anything lower than that. He was straight up fired. So I wanted to give my thoughts on it because I just, it's something that, I actually did. Again, I met the guy, nice person, just doesn't know what fucking fans want. I think he's made some of the worst fucking decisions in comic books. I really do. And again, easy to praise the guy when you have a job, but what about the stuff, all the bad decisions that have been made? The only person that I think has been kind of different than all the other creators is Scott Snyder, because he admits, like, hey, we've had atomic, or we've had nuclear fights But, you know, he gave me the opportunity, and he showed this. Apparently, you know, Dan Didio is the reason why Black Mirror was published for Scott Snyder, which is cool. Again, you're gonna have great content that goes out if you do have great artists and great writers and things like that. But that's not coming from Dan Didio. I think, again, it's like it's a 50-50 chance that your shit's going to be good or not. It just depends on your talent. And again, half the stuff at DC has been great, half of it's been crap. But the last, I would say the last 4 years, it's been really tough, and it's made me stop collecting monthly issues. I've had to just stop collecting monthly issues and just collect what I want, as in terms of like it's a limited series, or how's my wallet going to look if I, you know, keep continuing on. I've had to stop collecting like several titles because I just don't enjoy it anymore. I don't enjoy reading DC continuity anymore. But those are my thoughts on Dan Didio. Hoping for good in the future, and excited for better possibilities.